I want to start this by saying I've always been a pretty logical person. I don't scare easily, I don't believe in ghosts, and I've never really bought into the idea of the paranormal. But what happened to me in the fall of 2022 changed the way I look at a lot of things, especially the dark corners of a house you don't check very often. I had just moved back home after graduating college. My parents were out of town a lot for work, and they told me I could stay at the house until I found my own place. I figured it'd give me a chance to save some money and get on my feet. The house was in a quiet suburb just outside Pittsburgh. Nothing weird had ever happened there until that October. The first night I noticed something off, I had just finished playing Xbox around 1 a.m. I was lying in bed scrolling on my phone when I heard what sounded like a light thud coming from above me. Our attic is directly over my bedroom. It's just a storage space with old holiday decorations and some boxes of junk we never threw out. No one ever goes up there. The hatch is in the hallway ceiling, and you need a ladder to reach it. I paused my music and just listened. A few seconds passed. Nothing. I figured maybe something shifted up there. It's an old house. Stuff settles. So I brushed it off and went to sleep. But the next night, it happened again. This time it wasn't a single thud. It was more like light footsteps, slow, uneven, like someone pacing. I muted my TV and sat there in silence, staring at the ceiling. The sound lasted for about 30 seconds and then stopped completely. Again, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe a raccoon got in somehow, or a squirrel, but deep down something felt wrong. The steps were too slow, too deliberate, not the scampering of an animal. Still, I didn't want to look like a paranoid idiot, so I didn't say anything to anyone. That was my first mistake. Over the next few days, the sounds continued. Always late at night, always just above my room. I even recorded it on my phone one night and played it back for my friend Kyle. He laughed and said it sounded like someone tiptoeing up there. That joke didn't sit right with me, so the next evening I did something dumb. I waited until the house was quiet and got a ladder from the garage. I climbed up to the attic hatch with a flashlight in one hand and my phone recording in the other. I opened the hatch slowly, expecting a cloud of dust and maybe a squirrel darting past. But nothing. The attic was completely still. Just the usual boxes, some old chairs, a plastic bin full of tangled Christmas lights. I shined my flashlight across the room. Cobwebs in every corner, a few mouse droppings near the insulation, but no sign of anything alive. I stood there for a solid minute, recording everything. Then I shut the hatch, climbed down, and tried to forget about it. But the sound didn't stop. In fact, it got worse. A few nights later, I woke up around 3 a.m. to a loud dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled across the attic floor. I sat straight up in bed, heart racing. The sound was directly above me, long, slow drags followed by silence. Then a sudden thud like something dropped. This time I didn't wait. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my baseball bat, and ran into the hallway. I didn't even bother with the ladder. I just stared up at the attic hatch, heart pounding in my chest. That's when I noticed something that chilled me to the bone. The hatch was slightly open, just an inch, maybe two, but it was open. And I swear on everything, I never left it like that. I backed away slowly, not taking my eyes off that gap. Then I called the cops. When the officers arrived, they checked the attic with their flashlights. Again, nothing. No animals, no signs of forced entry, nothing out of place. But one of them did notice something strange. In the dust near the back of the attic, there were drag marks, like someone had crawled through the dust, low to the ground. They said it was probably a raccoon, even though there was no way in or out, and no droppings anywhere except near the hatch. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my room with the bat, door locked, eyes on the ceiling. The next morning, I installed a cheap motion sensor camera in the hallway, pointed directly at the attic hatch. I connected it to an app on my phone so I'd get alerts if it detected movement. Days went by, nothing. Then one night around 2:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I froze. I opened the app and watched as the grainy infrared image showed the attic hatch slowly swing open. I couldn't breathe. A few seconds later, a human hand, emerged from the hatch. Pale, thin fingers. It gripped the edge of the opening, followed by part of an arm. Then the video cut out. Just black. I don't even remember grabbing my keys. I just remember running out of the house barefoot and driving to a nearby gas station. I sat there for over an hour, shaking, before I called the cops again. This time they took it seriously. When they searched the attic, they found a sleeping bag tucked behind a stack of boxes, some empty food wrappers, a small notebook filled with scribbles. Most of it was nonsense, symbols, random words, but a few pages had chilling notes. One page said, "He doesn't know I'm up here. He never looks." Another said, "Only come out after 2 a.m. Stay quiet, stay low." The last entry read, "He's getting suspicious, might need to move soon." The police believe a man had been secretly living in our attic for weeks, maybe even longer. They said he must have snuck in during a time when no one was home, possibly months earlier while my parents were away, and just never left. They never caught him. To this day, I don't know who he was or how long he was watching me. I moved out of that house a week later. I haven't stepped foot in it since. Sometimes late at night, I still check the ceilings, half expecting to hear those slow, careful footsteps again. And when I do, I remind myself, always check your attic. I was 22 at the time and working part-time at a small diner in Michigan. It wasn't much, mostly night shifts, cleaning up after customers, and helping close the place down around midnight. I didn't mind the hours. I actually liked the quiet ride home late at night. But after what happened one cold Thursday in November, I'll never walk home alone in the dark again. That night started off like any other. We were slow, just a few late-night regulars and a couple truckers passing through. By the time we locked the doors at 12:15 a.m., it was just me and my coworker Lily, wiping down the counters and taking out trash. I remember stepping out the back door into the alley behind the diner, holding 2 bags of garbage. The night was dead silent, not even the sound of wind. That stillness should have been peaceful, but for some reason, I felt watched. I glanced down the alley. Nothing. Just the usual dumpsters and shadows stretching from the single overhead light. I dumped the trash, shrugged it off, and headed back inside. When I clocked out 20 minutes later, Lily offered me a ride home like she always did, but I told her I was good. I only lived about a 10-minute walk away. I had my hoodie on, headphones in, and figured I'd enjoy the night air. That was my second mistake. I took my usual route down 8th Street, past a couple closed gas stations, and into a residential area. That's when I noticed him. At first, I wasn't even sure he was real. Just a guy in dark clothes walking on the opposite side of the street about a block behind me. That's not weird by itself. People walk all the time. but something about his pace matched mine exactly. I'd slow down, he'd slow down. I'd speed up, he'd do the same. I took my headphones out. Suddenly, everything felt wrong. There weren't many streetlights on that part of the road, and he stayed just far enough back that I couldn't see his face. But I could tell he was watching me, like locked in. I turned the next corner early, off my usual path. My heart was picking up now. I walked faster, pretending not to be freaked out. I checked behind me. He turned the corner too. That's when I knew. This guy was following me. I grabbed my phone and pretended to make a call. "Yeah, I'm almost home, just a few blocks away. Yeah, Dad's waiting outside." I said it loud enough for him to hear, just in case. No change. He kept coming. At that point, I was maybe 5 minutes from home, but I didn't want to lead him there. So I made a quick decision and darted across the street toward a 24-hour laundromat. I figured if I could get inside, I'd be safe around other people. But when I got to the door, it was locked. Apparently, it used to be 24 hours. Now it closed at 11. I turned around and froze. He was standing at the end of the block. Just standing there. Not walking, not saying anything. Just watching me. I couldn't make out his face clearly, but I saw he was wearing a dark hoodie pulled low, hands in his pockets. His posture was stiff, unnaturally stiff, like he was waiting for something. I ran. I bolted across the street again and took off down another road. I don't think I've ever moved that fast in my life. My legs burned, my lungs felt like they were freezing, but I didn't stop. When I finally dared to look back, he was gone. Just gone. I ducked behind a row of bushes in someone's front yard and crouched there, heart racing for what felt like forever. I called my dad and told him to come get me. I didn't tell him everything. I just said I felt weird walking home. He pulled up 5 minutes later, and I went straight inside without looking back. The next day, I didn't go to work. I couldn't stop thinking about that guy. That night, I decided to check something. There's this neighborhood app called Nextdoor where people post about local stuff, missing pets, strange cars, things like that. I typed in a quick post about being followed the night before, just to see if anyone else had seen something. Within an hour, I got 3 responses. All of them were from women in the same area, describing the same man, tall, thin, wearing a hoodie, seen walking late at night, never speaking. One woman said she caught him standing at the end of her driveway at 2 a.m. just staring at her window. Another said he followed her teenage daughter home from a nearby bus stop 2 weeks earlier. I brought the post to the local police. They took a report, but there wasn't much they could do. No real description, no face, no crime technically committed. But the weirdest part came 3 days later. I was walking out to get the mail in the early evening when I noticed something taped to our front door. It was a folded piece of notebook paper. No envelope, no stamp, just stuck there with a single piece of Scotch tape. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. Inside, written in blocky, all capital letters, were the words, "I know you saw me." I called the police immediately. They came out, took fingerprints, even dusted the door. But there were no prints, nothing. After that, my dad installed cameras around the house and motion sensor lights. I didn't walk home from work again. Hell, I didn't even work nights anymore. Over time, the sightings on the neighborhood app stopped. Maybe he moved on. Maybe he got caught. No one ever found out who he was. But sometimes when I walk outside late at night, I still look both ways. Because once you've been followed by someone who never blinks, someone who doesn't say a word, just tracks you like prey in the dark, you never feel safe walking alone again. I've never been a big nature guy, but 2 years ago, I agreed to go on a weekend camping trip with 3 of my closest friends, Derek, Ryan, and Miguel. We were all 21, and it was supposed to be a break from college stress. Just beer, a campfire, and total isolation out in the woods of Northern Oregon. But what we found there still messes with my head. We left on a Friday afternoon in early September. The plan was to hike out to a remote spot Derek knew from a childhood trip with his uncle. No cell service, no people, just miles of trees and quiet. It sounded perfect, until it wasn't. We parked at a small trailhead and started hiking in around 4 p.m. The woods were dense, the air felt heavy, and as the light faded, everything got quieter. Not peaceful quiet, dead quiet. No birds, no bugs, just our footsteps and the occasional branch snapping underfoot. By the time we reached the spot, an open clearing near a shallow creek, the sun was almost gone. We set up 2 tents, got a fire going, and started drinking. For a while, everything was normal. We were laughing, telling stupid stories, and trying to spook each other with urban legends. But around 11 p.m., something shifted. Ryan was in the middle of talking when he just stopped and looked behind me. His expression went pale. I turned around, expecting to see an animal or maybe a person walking up on us. But there was nothing, just trees. I asked what he saw, and he said, "I thought I saw someone standing behind that tree, like a shape." We brushed it off, assumed the beer was messing with him, and laughed it away. But I started feeling it too, that sensation where the air gets tight, and your instincts start screaming at you that something isn't right. We all agreed to crash early. I bunked with Derek, while Miguel and Ryan took the other tent. Sometime during the night, I woke up. No noise, just the feeling. You know how sometimes you just know you're not alone? I sat up slowly, listening. Then I heard it. Crunch. Very faint. Leaves or twigs being stepped on, slowly just outside the tent. I looked over. Derek was asleep. I didn't want to wake him in case it was just a deer, but the steps didn't move on. They circled us. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Deliberate, slow, like someone was walking barefoot, testing each step. I could see a faint shadow moving through the fabric of the tent. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure it would give me away. Then, nothing. Silence. I stayed frozen for maybe 10 minutes, then finally worked up the courage to unzip the tent just an inch and peek outside with my flashlight. Nobody. The woods were still. The fire was out. I figured maybe I'd imagined it, until I saw the footprints. Bare feet, right outside our tent, in a perfect circle. They weren't ours, we'd all been wearing boots. The next morning, I showed the guys. No one wanted to admit it freaked them out, but you could tell it did. We joked about forest people and Bigfoot, but it didn't feel like a joke. That day, we hiked farther out to a nearby ridge and came back around sunset. That's when things got worse. Miguel was the first to notice something off. Our stuff had been moved. Not stolen, moved. The cooler was a few feet from where we left it. One of the folding chairs was tipped over. And Ryan's sleeping bag was outside the tent, half unzipped, like someone had started dragging it out. We were pissed, thinking maybe other hikers were messing with us. But we hadn't seen anyone for miles. That night, we all agreed to stay up for a while, just in case. Around 1:30 a.m., we were sitting by the fire when we heard it. A whistle. It came from the trees, sharp and deliberate. 3 notes, high, low, high. We froze. Miguel whispered, "Did you hear that?" Before anyone could answer, we heard another whistle, same pattern, coming from the opposite direction. Then a third, much farther away. Ryan stood up with a flashlight and yelled, "Who's out there?" No response, just silence. We grabbed our knives and sat back to back by the fire, waiting. Nothing happened for the next hour. Eventually, we went back into the tents, but none of us slept. At dawn, we packed everything and hiked out fast. No breakfast, no talking. When we got back to the car, we were shocked to find a small piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. It wasn't there before. It was folded once and had a single sentence written in messy handwriting. "You shouldn't sleep in the open." That was it. We drove straight back to town, barely speaking the entire way. We never figured out who or what was out there with us. We went back a few weeks later with a ranger and found signs that someone had been living in those woods. A makeshift shelter, bones from small animals, dozens of footprints, No sign of the person. None of us go camping anymore. And sometimes when I hear someone whistling at night, 3 notes, high, low, high, I wonder if they followed us back.